And few figures are as, big in modern times as Demetrius Big Meech Flannery, co-founder of the Black Mafia family, BMF.
Absolutely. And you've probably seen the TV show, right? Heard the whispers that always seem to follow these huge stories.
Exactly. Top cultures really run with the BMF story.
Yeah, almost to the point where, like, fact and fiction, they get kind of blurry.
But underneath all that glamour, that narrative, there's always been this nagging question, hasn't there? A real core
Puzzle. There has. And that's what we're trying to get into today.
Right. So the big question for this deep dive, did Big Meech actually cooperate with the feds? Or is the real story of betrayal maybe somewhere else entirely?
Yeah, that's the mission. We want to cut through all the talk, speculation, and untangle this really complex web of allegations. And we're doing that by looking closely at the source materials you've got.
Okay, so context first. In street culture, especially at the level BMF was operating, silence, loyalty, that's not optional, is it?
Oh, absolutely not. It's like the bedrock, the absolute foundation. To break that code, to snitch, that's the worst thing you can do, almost unforgivable.
Right, but here's the twist, and what our sources are suggesting pretty strongly.
Yeah.
The popular idea of who broke that code, it might be missing some really key pieces. It might not actually be the person everyone assumes.
Okay, interesting. So let's get into it. Big Meech, definitely an iconic figure.
No doubt. Co-founder of BMF, his empire shot up like a rocket and then boom, crash spectacularly. It's legendary stuff.
It really is. And for years, despite all the attention, the rumor that just wouldn't die was that he, Big Meech himself, cooperated, flipped on people.
Yeah, a lot of people basically take that as fact, like it's just known.
Yeah. And this is where the sources kind of throw a wrench in that whole narrative.
Okay.
The immediate finding, looking at the records, is that there is no record anywhere showing Big Meech cooperated. None.
Wait, really? No record at all?
Nope. He didn't testify against anyone. He didn't file any court motions asking for a sentence reduction based on helping prosecutors. And there's absolutely no known cooperation agreement he signed.
Wow. Okay, for some of that high profile, that's a pretty loud silence in the documents, isn't it?
It's a very powerful absence of evidence, yeah.
So this rumor has been swirling for years, shaping how people see him, his whole legacy. And you're saying the actual paper trail, or lack thereof, tells a totally different story.
That's what the sources indicate. It really forces you to reframe how you think about Meech's situation.
So the facts, as we currently have them from these sources, actually support the idea that Meech stuck to the code, the street code of silence.
As far as cooperation goes, yes. The available facts point that way, which is huge in that context.
Okay, so if Meech didn't cooperate, it begs the question, right?
Yeah.
Who did?
Yeah.
Or who might have?
Exactly. And that leads us to another really key figure who got tangled up in all this, Dion Cuffy Gatling.
Cuffy Gatling. Okay, who was he?
Well, according to the sources, Cuffy was allegedly running his own drug trafficking organization, a separate one, bringing large amounts of heroin, cocaine, meth into the St. Louis area. This was roughly between 2009 and 2014.
Okay, so a major player in his own right.
Seems so. And the accusations against him were extremely serious, like really serious, way beyond just the drug charges.
How serious are we talking?
He was tied directly to the murders of two people, Theodis Howard in 2010 and Terrence Morgan in 2013.
Murders. And why were they killed?
Allegedly, both were killed specifically to stop them from cooperating with law enforcement in other cases.
Whoa. Okay, so killing people to enforce the code of silence we were just talking about.
Precisely. These aren't just, incidental deaths. They strike right at the heart of that code.
But here's the confusing part, right?
Yeah.
Despite these incredibly serious allegations linking into murders supposedly committed to stop cooperation.
Yeah.
Cuffy somehow avoided direct murder charges, is that right?
That's exactly right. Instead of facing murder charges, he pleaded guilty in February 2019 to drug trafficking and a firearms offense that resulted in death.
It resulted in death. What does that mean legally? How is that different from a murder charge?
It's a critical distinction. It acknowledges a death occurred during the commission of another crime, like the firearms offense, but it avoids the specific intent and penalties of a direct murder charge, which often carries a life sentence.
Okay, so he's linked to two murders meant to silence people, but pleads to something less severe.
Yeah.
That definitely raises eyebrows.
It does.
So what sentence did he actually get for those charges?
He got 27 years. That's 324 months.
27 years. How does that stack up, typically?
Well, crucially, the sources point out the sentence was below the maximum possible under the federal sentencing guidelines.
Below the guidelines. Can you explain what that means for listeners?
Sure, sure. Federal guidelines are basically a complex point system judges use. They look at the severity of the crime, the defendant's history, stuff like that, to recommend a sentencing range. Getting a sentence below that recommended range, especially in a case this serious involving deaths, it's noteworthy. It doesn't happen automatically.
Yeah, below guidelines. And then there was his appeal attempt, right?
Yeah, he tried to appeal his conviction later.
And what happened?
It got dismissed, shut down, not because the facts were solid, but because his plea agreement included something called a waiver of the right to appeal.
He waived his right to appeal. Why would someone agree to that?
It's actually pretty common in plea deals, but it's a really big give up for the defendant. Basically, you agree not to challenge your conviction or sentence later on, usually in exchange for maybe a lighter sentence recommendation from the prosecutor or to avoid even worse charges.
So it seals the deal.
It essentially seals your fate, yeah. Cuffey agreed to this as long as his sentence was within or below that guideline range they'd talked about. And since it was below...
His appeal was dead on arrival.
Exactly.
So you put it all together. Linked to murders, to silence witnesses, no direct murder charges, a sentence below the guidelines, and he signs away his right to appeal.
Mm-hmm.
That whole combination, I mean, you can see why that would set off alarm bells in street culture, right? It screams deal.
Absolutely. In that world, these kinds of discrepancies, where things just don't seem to line up with the severity of the alleged crimes, they immediately spark suspicion. People assume there was cooperation, maybe an implicit, unspoken deal.
Maybe even like third-party cooperation, like someone passing info for him.
That's definitely one possibility people speculate about. Passing info through an intermediary to keep your own hands clean, maintain plausible deniability.
Wow. Yeah, this whole situation really makes you question how justice works behind the scenes and how it's perceived. Is fairness the same for everyone?
It raises exactly those kinds of critical questions.
And just when you think it can't get more tangled, enter Tammy Cowens.
Ah, yes. Tammy Cowens.
Pretty well known, right, for securing Big Meech's life, writes his story, basically. And then she was a co-producer on the BMF show.
That's her public connection, yes. But her name got pulled into this whole controversy in a really direct and frankly problematic way.
How so? What happened?
Well, according to reports highlighted in our sources, Tammy Cowens was romantically involved with a senior law enforcement official.
Romantically involved. With who?
DEA Supervisory Special Agent Keith Cromer.
A DEA supervisor. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Was he directly on Meech's case?
Not the direct case agent, no, but he was based in Atlanta, supervising drug trafficking investigations. That put him, uncomfortably close to investigations touching on BMF affiliates.
Yeah, that sounds like a massive conflict of interest right off the bat.
Huge potential for it, yes, and it definitely raised eyebrows. Serious ones.
So did anything come of these concerns about Agent Cromer's conduct? Were there investigations?
Oh, yeah. Big time. In 2015, the DEA's own internal affairs, the Office of Professional Responsibility, OPR, and the Inspector General, OIG, launched probes.
And what did they find?
They found significant misconduct concerns involving Cromer, and crucially, some of those concerns were tied directly to whether he'd had improper interactions with a confidential source.
A confidential source. Involved in which case?
Involved in Cuffey Gatling's case. This source, identified just as CS1, was referenced in the affidavit used to get the wiretap on Cuffey.
Wait, so the agent potentially involved with Tammy Cowens might have had improper dealings with an informant used against Cuffey Gatling?
That was the concern, yes. It called the integrity of the very evidence against Cuffey into question.
Okay, that's serious. How serious?
So serious that the prosecution actually conceded it warranted something called a Franks hearing.
A Franks hearing. Remind us what that is.
It's a pretty rare thing in court. It's a hearing where the defense gets to challenge the truthfulness of the sworn statement, the affidavit, that police used to get a warrant. It basically means there's a real suspicion that law enforcement might have lied or recklessly disregarded the truth in that affidavit.
So the prosecution admitting one was needed means they acknowledged the allegations about the affidavit's problems were substantial.
Absolutely. It's a big deal. It put them on the back foot.
So what happened at the Franks hearing? Did the court find the affidavit was bogus?
Well, here's another twist. Despite acknowledging the need for the hearing, and despite all the concerns about Cromer and CS1, the court ultimately ruled that the critical parts of the affidavit were largely accurate.
How could they rule that?
They found that things like the informant's reliability overall and the sequence of events described were basically true. They decided that any omissions, like details about Cromer's relationship with Cowens or any payments made to CS1, weren't essential to establishing probable cause for the wiretap in the first place.
So the court basically said, yeah, there was some sketchy stuff happening on the side with the agent, but the core info used for the warrant was still good enough.
Essentially, yes. They found the core evidence still stood, despite the ethical cloud around the agent.
Okay, that's a critical outcome. But doesn't make the situation any less murky, does it? It just shifts the focus again.
Exactly. If the agent was compromised, what does that say about Tammy Cowan's role in all this? What were her motivations?
And the sources mentioned there's a lot of speculation swirling around her relationship with Cromer, right? Important to stress, these are speculative.
Very speculative, yes. But the context makes them, well, plausible lines of inquiry. For instance, one podcast host, though it's unverified, claimed she got a big finder's fee from deals involving Meech, Cuffy, and others.
A finder's fee, like for connecting people or information.
That was the unsubstantiated claim. It points to the kind of high financial stakes potentially involved. But beyond that, the sources suggest other possible motivations for Cowans.
Like what? Self-preservation.
That's one strong possibility. Maybe she was trying to protect herself if she felt implicated somehow, either in Cuffy's business or just by association. Cooperating, even indirectly, could seem like a lifeline.
Or maybe the opposite. Maybe she was trying to, use her connection to further implicate Meech.
That's another theory. If she saw an advantage in aligning herself, even discreetly, with law enforcement against him, strategic move, perhaps.
Then there's that really complex idea. Could Meech himself have been playing a long game?
Yeah, some speculate Meech might have actually encouraged her to get close to the DEA.
Why would he do that?
Could be strategic. To shield himself somehow, gather intel from the inside, maybe even manipulate the narrative about BMF by having a sort of back channel. It sounds intricate, but in that world.
Anything's possible.
Or maybe it's simpler. Maybe Cowans was just looking out for number one. Survival instincts kicking in during a very dangerous, high-stakes situation.
Right, caught between powerful forces.
Without clear proof, it's all speculation. But given the context, the relationships, the investigations, the money, the potential prison time, these are all plausible scenarios for why someone might act in ways that seem ambiguous.
Ambiguous is a good word for it.
Okay.
Okay, so let's pull all these threads together. We come back to that core idea.
Yeah.
The street code, silence, loyalty.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole deep dive into the sources really hammers home one point. Big Meech, despite all the rumors for all these years, has no documented record of breaking that code. No cooperation papers, no testimony.
Right. And he's currently in a halfway house in Miami. No evidence suggests he snitched to get there. His image in that regard seems intact based on the available records.
Yeah, that stands in really stark contrast, doesn't it, to the murkier situations around some of the other people involved.
Absolutely. It's a jarring contrast. You've got
Right.
Cuffy Gatling avoiding direct murder charges related to silencing witnesses.
Yeah.
You've got Tammy Cowans personally entangled with the DEA supervisor who was overseeing relevant investigations.
Which led to serious internal probes and questions about the evidence itself.
Exactly. You add up the conflicts of interest, the apparent legal leniency Cuffy received, the acknowledged need for a Franks hearing, which points to investigative issues. It all raises serious credibility questions.
These aren't just rumors anymore. These are documented events, legal outcomes, and internal investigations that genuinely make you question who was playing what angle.
Right. It points towards a kind of paradox, doesn't it? The widespread narrative was Big Meech snitched, but the proof for that, according to these sources, it's just not there.
Meanwhile,
You look closely at the circumstances around Cuffy's plea deal and Cowan's connections, and those situations seem to offer, as the sources put it, far more justifiable grounds for betrayal suspicions.
it really flips the script. It challenges everything you thought you knew about the BMF saga's ending.
It absolutely does.
So wrapping this up, this deep dive has really peeled back layers on a story many people felt they had figured out. The main takeaway seems clear. The story of who betrayed who around Big Meech. It's way more complicated than the common rumors let on. It's this tangled web.
Yeah, a web where the lack of hard proof against Meech really contrasts with the, let's say, suspicious circumstances surrounding others. The legal outcomes, the personal entanglements. It creates a much more nuanced picture than just simple gossip.
And the so what? Here, the reason this matters.
It's about looking past the easy narratives, right? Digging into the details, especially when the official story feels thin or contradictory.
Yeah, understanding these nuances, it really changes how you see concepts like loyalty and betrayal, especially in these super high-stakes worlds.
It challenges you to question what you hear, what you assume, and it gives you maybe a clearer glimpse of how the justice system and the criminal world it interacts with can sometimes operate in the shadows.